Prepare to discover the surprising truth behind a beloved show's early cancellation, a revelation that changed TV history. The year 1999 was a whirlwind, marked by the looming specter of Y2K, a global anxiety that felt like a movie playing out in real life, with the survival of millions seemingly hanging in the balance. It was also the year Prince had been anticipating since 1982, and it certainly didn't disappoint. Several classic shows debuted right at the dawn of the new millennium, including one that would redefine television dramas for the next 3 decades, The Sopranos. Television itself was further revolutionized by the introduction of the DVR, allowing viewers to record their favorite shows and watch them later, a precursor to modern video streaming. You could watch what you wanted, when you wanted it. Even Time's Batman Beyond Times offered a vision of 2019 that, while never materializing, looked incredibly cool. This suit looks even better than I thought it would. Join Culture Pulse as we explore all the pivotal TV shows, news, and events of 1999. Are you ready to dive into what everyone was watching the year Napster was created? On January 10th, HBO launched the first episode of what is now widely considered the single greatest television drama of all time, The Sopranos. Starring James Gandolfini as Tony Soprano, a New Jersey mafia boss, the series explored his struggles to balance family and professional life, leading him to seek the aid of a psychiatrist. Any thoughts at all on why you blacked out? I don't know. Stress, maybe. You prick. Where's my money? The show ran for 6 seasons and garnered an impressive 21 Emmy Awards. That same night, Fox broadcast the first episode of the animated comedy The PJs, co-created by Eddie Murphy and Larry Wilmore. As Wilmore described it, "We're doing a satire of the projects, basically. So, it was something that hadn't quite been done, you know." The series followed a building superintendent navigating daily life in an urban housing project. All right, you going to down a throne, Queenie. Notably, it was Disney's first animated series for adults. Despite its unique premise, it struggled in the ratings before moving to the WB for its 3rd and final season. Just 1 day later, Jon Stewart took over as host of Comedy Central's Time's The Daily Show, interviewing Michael J. Fox as his first guest. Stewart's tenure would propel the series to unprecedented levels of popularity and political relevance. All right, folks, what do we got? We got a guy that could blow the lid off the tobacco industry. I heard about a cure for cancer. Too dry. There's some kind of a pornography convention at the Skyark Hotel. Skyark on 52nd Street. Yeah, that's the one. Gentleman just calls for a live remote. He eventually departed on August 6th, 2015, passing the hosting duties to Trevor Noah. However, on February 12th, 2024, Stewart made a highly anticipated return, reclaiming his anchor's chair on Time's The Daily Show Times for 1 night a week, a role he continues to hold as of this writing. On January 23rd, film critic Gene Siskel appeared on what would tragically be his final episode of the iconic movie review series, Siskel and Ebert. In this installment, the duo reviewed the films Times, At First Sight, Another Day in Paradise, The High-Low Country, Playing by Heart, and Times, The Theory of Flight. Siskel, who had been diagnosed with a brain tumor, soon announced a temporary leave of absence from the series. Sadly, he passed away from complications from brain surgery less than a month later. On February 20th, 1999. Roger Ebert reflected on their bond, stating, "People always asked if we really hated each other, and one thing I know for sure is that we didn't. You know, big guy, I love you." Just over a week later, Fox aired the very first episode of the animated comedy Times Family Guy. Renowned for its surreal pop culture references and edgy humor, the show quickly made an impression. Funny guy, Tom Hanks. Everything he says is a stitch. I have AIDS. Despite its distinctive style, the series initially struggled in the ratings and was canceled after just 3 seasons. However, reruns on Cartoon Network transformed it into a cult hit, directly leading to its highly anticipated revival in 2005. Well, this is peaceful. Friends Times boasted many iconic episodes, but the one where everybody finds out, which aired on February 11th, remains among the most beloved. In this pivotal installment, Phoebe uncovers Monica and Chandler's secret relationship, marking one of the most significant developments in the show's history. Phoebe just found out about Monica and Chandler. You mean how they're friends and nothing more? The episode was nominated for 3 Emmy Awards and is frequently cited as the single best of the entire series. I love you, Monica. I love you too. Chandler. Vi. On March 13th, Nickelodeon celebrated the 100th installment of its popular kids' sketch comedy series, All That, with a special hour-long live episode. This unique broadcast featured live appearances from guest stars like Melissa Joan Hart and Lauryn Hill, alongside a taped message from Britney Spears. I hurt my knee and I have to stay at home. But hey, you know what would make me feel a lot better? Watching my favorite character, Detective Dan. It marked the first and only time the show was performed entirely before a live studio audience. 3 weeks later, Fox introduced the world to Time's Futurama, the sci-fi animated series from Time's Simpsons Times creator Matt Groening. It followed the adventures of Philip J. Fry, a delivery boy who awakens 1,000 years in the future. My parents, my co-workers, my girlfriend. I'll never see any of them again. Yahoo. There, he befriends a one-eyed mutant named Leela and a sassy robot named Bender. Like Time's Family Guy, it was canceled after 4 seasons but eventually achieved cult classic status, leading to 2 separate revivals. Comedy Central aired the first episode of the sitcom Times Strangers with Candy Times on April 7th. Starring Amy Sedaris and Stephen Colbert, the series followed Jerry Blank, a middle-aged woman who returns to high school to turn her life around. Calculated your final grade point average based on this morning's geography pop quiz. It all adds up to you being held back. But if I don't graduate by the time I'm 50, I'll be the laughing stock of Flatboy High. As Comedy Central's first live-action narrative series, it lasted just 3 seasons but is now revered as a cult classic. Anchors away for Time's SpongeBob SquarePants. On May 1st, Nickelodeon offered viewers a sneak peek at the first episode of what would become a global phenomenon. Created by marine science educator and animator Steven Hillenburg, the show exploded in popularity, becoming the highest-rated Saturday morning cartoon of the year after just 1 month. Hillenburg explained his inspiration. This comic book that I created when I worked at the Marine Institute. It's called The Inner Tidal Zone. It started me thinking if I'm going to do a show, I would do it about these invertebrates and these crazy animals that exist in the ocean. More than 25 years later, it's still going strong. ABC broadcast the series finale of Time's Home Improvement, starring Tim Allen as a home improvement show host and father. The final episode, watched by over 35% of American households, depicted him turning down a lucrative offer to continue his show. If you're going to turn this show into a 3-ring circus, I might just quit. Sorry to lose you. This storyline mirrored real life, as Allen and co-star Patricia Richardson famously turned down a combined $75 million to continue Time's Home Improvement Times for 1 more season. Well, it was a lot of fun, even though I can't remember one funny thing that happened. The 90-minute finale was a major television event, and on June 2nd, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Times concluded with What You Leave Behind. This finale expertly tied up several long-running narrative threads and is now considered one of the series' best installments, perhaps even the single best Times Star Trek Times series finale of all time. You always said I looked good in a tuxedo. You do. Comedy Central, however, aimed for a different kind of programming 1 week later when it broadcast the first episode of Time's The Man Show. Created by and starring Adam Carolla and Jimmy Kimmel, this sketch comedy series both satirized and reveled in stereotypical male behavior. We are building a dam to stop the river of estrogen that is drowning us in political correctness. We call this dam The Man Show. It featured segments like Shotgun Beer, where you got 2 tabs to pull, one on the top, the other on the bottom. Originally developed for ABC, who ultimately passed on it, the series frequently drew accusations of sexism. Now we leave you with girls jumping on trampolines. Despite the controversy, The Man Show Times lasted 6 seasons. The cultural phenomenon Times Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Times aired its first unsuspecting episode on August 16th. Hosted by Regis Philbin, the trivia game show quickly captivated audiences. It saw its first $1 million winner on November 19th, when John Carpenter famously used a lifeline to call his father not for help with the answer, but to inform him he was about to win. And this should make you a real crowd favorite. John works for the IRS and not the director of Times, Escape from New York. The show would run for an astounding 22 seasons, spawning a slew of iconic catchphrases like, "I'd like to call a friend." On September 13th, the surreal slacker comedy Times, Space Times, premiered on the UK's Channel 4, featuring future stars like Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. The show was directed by Edgar Wright, who would later reunite with Pegg and Frost for the cult hit Cornetto trilogy. The series had a distinctive, referential humor. Hey, what's that for? I was thinking we would do that thing. You know, like in that film with Andy McDowell and Gerard Depardieu. You know, where they get married so that she can keep a house. I should do it. Moving into the fall, Law and Order Times aired the first episode of its popular spin-off, Law and Order Special Victims Unit, on September 20th. Originally starring Mariska Hargitay and Christopher Maloney, the show has become a television staple. I do see myself as the father of 4 children, none of whom I'd like exposed to Mr. Cluster's shortcomings. Remarkably, the series has now run for 26 seasons and continues to produce new episodes, making it one of the longest-running scripted primetime dramas in television history. America gained a new TV president on September 22nd, when Times, The West Wing Times, debuted on NBC. Created by Aaron Sorkin, the acclaimed series followed Martin Sheen's President Josiah Bartlett and his Oval Office staff as they navigated a 2-term presidency. Its sharp dialogue and political insights were instantly recognizable. Thy father is the 3rd commandment. Then, what's the 1st commandment? I am the Lord your God. Thou shalt worship no other God before me. Boy, those were the days, huh? The politically influential series would win an unprecedented 9 Emmys in its first season, and a total of 27 throughout its entire run. On September 25th, NBC aired the pilot for the Judd Apatow-produced teen drama, Freaks and Geeks. Set in the 1980s, the series explored the ups and downs of adolescence and featured a remarkable cast of soon-to-be famous faces, including James Franco, Seth Rogen, Jason Segel, and Linda Cardellini. May I join you here in the Enterprise mess hall? I'm so hungry I could eat a tribble. Despite its critical acclaim, it was canceled after just 12 episodes. However, thanks to Apatow's continued collaboration with its cast in his subsequent films, it eventually achieved cult classic status. September 26th may have been a Sunday, but that didn't stop NBC from celebrating the 25th anniversary of Time's Saturday Night Live. The 3-hour primetime special featured appearances from luminaries like Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Billy Crystal, Lorraine Newman, Garrett Morris, and Steve Martin, among dozens of others. Well, who's your favorite cast member that you ever got to work with? Well, that's a tough one, but I'm going to say Will Ferrell. That guy is going to make it. Very talented. While 25 years seemed like a remarkable milestone at the time, many of these same stars would turn out once again on a Sunday, February 16th, to celebrate Time's SNL's 50th anniversary, a special that again featured an army of guest stars, including A-listers like Ryan Reynolds and Emma Stone. Courage. The Cowardly Dog Times arrived that fall on Cartoon Network. This animated horror comedy followed an anxious dog living with an elderly couple in the desolate Nowhere, Kansas. The critically acclaimed series ran for 4 seasons and is regularly cited as one of the best and scariest kids shows ever made. Shake. Courage. Shake. Tragedy struck 1 month later when Time's South Park Times voice actress Mary Kay Bergman, who lent her voice to nearly all the show's female characters, died by suicide. Remember, don't get off this bus or a big scary monster will eat you. Bergman was an accomplished performer, having also voiced iconic characters like Snow White for Disney, among many others. Legendary stand-up comic Richard Pryor made his final television appearance on the Norm Macdonald sitcom, The Norm Show, on December 1st. Pryor, playing an old man in a wheelchair who frequently attacked his nurses, appeared only briefly in the episode's cold open. What the hell was that? Wind. Wind. Look, you just behave yourself. All right. The iconic comedian passed away almost to the day, 6 years later, in December 2005. And finally, with just 17 days left in the 20th century, Buffy the Vampire Slayer Times aired the fan-favorite episode, Hush. This unique installment pitted Buffy against a gang of creepy ghouls who steal the voices of everyone in Sunnydale. Remarkably, it contained only 17 minutes of dialogue within its 4-minute runtime. The episode earned an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Writing for a Drama Series, the show's only nomination, and is now widely considered the best episode of the entire franchise. From groundbreaking dramas to enduring animated classics, 1999 truly delivered a memorable year in television history.